Well, welcome to our second connection conversation. It's with my friend, like I said, Jerre Real, and his family is here. Jessica's here, and we've known them for about a year now, which is really cool. Yeah. We met them at Life Church the Sunday that they were there, really, and followed up with you guys, and it was cool to connect. You came from Florida at that point, is what we knew, and we had been in Ephrata for 5 years. So we were like, hey, come and let's go hang out at the Green Dragon, because we were there every Friday. And they had been there a few times because they grew up in this area, but they said they hadn't been there in a while. So we thought that we were going to take you for a tour of the place. And sure enough, we realized that this guy knew everybody there. So we'll talk more about that, but he grew up Amish, so a lot of these people that were in the market, of course, you know, I don't know, they were Amish, related, or friends or neighbors, so that was a good memory. It was since then, you guys have been around, we've gotten together, we've hung out, we've done a lot of stuff, which is cool for a year. There's a lot more to do, but it's been really cool. You guys helped us move, and you were at our church first vision night, so that was really cool. So some of you might know or recognize them, but maybe not. So we've talked a lot about church and developing authentic relationships. That's going to be our theme this morning. But I mean, a lot of that starts with sharing just a little bit about who you are and your story. So I want to give you the opportunity to do that now to everybody.
Cool. Well, my name is Jerre Real, and my wife Jess, and we have 5 kids. So we're kept busy, and we came back from Florida, and we started our own business. Well, I worked construction there, and I came here and started construction also, and just started my own business about, what's it been, babe, 6 months? 6 months ago. And so I've just been blessed with work, and just just been really blessed with being able to work. I work a lot, too much sometimes. So that's kind of what I do, and we have, like I said, we have 5 kids, and they keep us stepping. We have our oldest is a daughter, and then we have 4 boys. So we go on a lot of adventures together.
Definitely. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up or how you grew up. And then maybe a short story of how you met your wife and how you ended up where you are now.
Well, I grew up Amish. I was probably 5 or 6, I would say, when my parents left the Amish. But I kind of think of it like just a regular childhood. Like when you're growing up, that's all you know. And so it's just like normal for you. Until, I guess, when I got older, looking back, it was like, well, that wasn't so normal after all. Just because a lot of their traditions and a lot of things they did, it was more based on religion, I would say, than Jesus. And so a lot of the things that you did, you had to do to be accepted in that community, like dress a certain way, have your hair cut a certain way. So there's a lot of those things growing up that I didn't realize was different, because everybody around me did the same things. But yeah, so that was kind of a weird dynamic, I guess. And then as you grow up, it's like, wow, that's kind of weird. Why did they do that? But it's just because it was a man-made rule. This is what you do to be accepted in that community, basically. So yeah, that's how, I mean, I didn't think it was different until now. It was really different. But we didn't, I never grew up with a TV. We never grew up with radios. And so it was all new when we got out of that. It was like, oh, I'm allowed to listen to a radio? Like, this is kind of cool. So yeah.
Tell us briefly how you met Jessica.
Well, when I think I was 22, my parents decided to move to northern Pennsylvania, like State College area. And I had a job here. and I was like, I'm not going with you. And so I moved into an apartment building, and probably a month or two later, Jess moved into that same complex, and then just she stalked me. I mean, she kind of stalked me a lot. That's my version. That's my version. So no, we met a couple times in the parking lot and talked, and I played softball like right up the street and invited her to a game, and then kind of from there we were dating for not long, like 2 months, even maybe less than that, and we were engaged after that, and 6 months later we got married. So like we didn't even know each other a year. It was like probably, what was it, 8 months? Yeah, it was 8 months. So now we've been together for like 17 years. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd recommend it, but when you know, I guess. So it's been good.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So just starting growing up Amish, like it's cool to say. I mean, you might think of it like you grow up a certain way, and that way is normal to you, and whatever that way is. Yeah. And then you kind of realize later on, or through life circumstances, that it, what exactly does normal even mean?
Yeah.
Right? So, what was one good thing that you can look back on growing up, kind of in that culture and in that way of life that still affects the way that you live today?
I think the biggest thing for me is their community. Like the community that they have is very important to them, and they support each other like wholeheartedly. And I think that's a big thing for me, is to make sure a family stays strong. And then the other thing is they taught me a lot of hard work. I mean, that culture is very hardworking. They're dedicated to work, and it's to a fault sometimes. And for me, I can get wrapped up in my work, and I just keep working. Like I don't get tired. I just work, and sometimes that's a big downfall too. But those are two of the things that I learned. And with their community, like let's just say, Kevin, you wanted to start a small like grocery store right down the street. Well, it wouldn't work for you because people wouldn't support you. Like not enough of your own people would support you. But an Amish family can start a store right down the street, and all their community will support them. And there's just a huge support group. Like even if they don't like each other, even if they don't necessarily agree with each other's beliefs, they still support each other because they're in the same community. And that's the big thing that I've taken away, is like that's huge. Like when you have a group of people that stick together, you can do anything. I mean, you see the way they take over certain parts of areas, and it's because they all come together and they support each other, and they build their own schools, they build their own businesses, and there's a lot of support. So, yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, so obviously we talked briefly in your intro about your businesses that you've been a part of and starting, and maybe some of that hard work certainly has paid off in getting that stuff accomplished, and the community aspect of having your family involved in those things. So I mean, we're starting a new church. When we first met you guys a year ago, it was like a dream. It's like, here's this booklet that we want to do, and here we are a year later, kind of in this process, ready to really push on the gas pedal and get going here in certain ways. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from somebody that has started things before and kept them going. So give us a brief overview of some of the businesses that you've been a part of starting, and how they went, and then I'll have a follow-up question or two.
Okay. Yeah. When I was really young, my dad, he was always he always wanted to do his own thing. When I was younger, he had his own roofing business, and then he got out of that and he started buying and selling antiques. And so, like, we were involved in a lot of different businesses growing up. So I think when we got married, Jess was an entrepreneur, I was an entrepreneur, and so we looked for opportunities, and really a lot of the things that we started was, whether it was like a night dream or it was a dream that we had ourselves. That's the way we based a lot of our businesses, I guess. Like we started a deli, and it was something I always wanted to do, and I wanted to get out of construction because I've been in it my whole life. So I've been trying to get out of construction like for a long time, but it doesn't let me. So we started we sold like deli meats and cheese and like fresh chicken, fresh pork. And so we started that, and Jess was a lot of like, she dealt with all the inspectors, all the paperwork aspects, and I'm just more of the bull, like behind everything. Just, I do the work, she does all the head work, and she's awesome at that. But like, so we started that, and it's just a lot of hard work. Like, it's really hard work. There was like, because we couldn't pay anybody, so we were there ourselves. I was there. We were open Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays, and so I'd get there Thursday mornings, probably like, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the morning to start setting up. And so we opened at 9. So from 4 to 9, I was setting up all the meats and everything. So it was a lot of hard work, and I think the challenge of it was balancing family and work, and not getting too caught up in working, because we can always do that when we don't feel like we're making enough money. We always tend to work more to try to balance it out. And I was working construction at the same time, so I was there 3 days a week, working construction 3 days a week. So it was just a lot of trying to figure out how to balance. And we found that through most of the businesses we started, is trying to find the balance and the right when to shut it off. Like when to just be able to say, okay, I'm going home with my family. I'm not talking about work. I'm not talking about our business. Even like, when we would go on dates, it was always about, how can we do this with the business? How can we, do things the right way? And it's like, sometimes we forgot about our relationship, and that's the most important part of it, is our relationship. And so that was a huge challenge. It still is a challenge to work through that.
Yeah, that's some good advice. As a church planter, we talk a lot about that. We just went on a trip to celebrate our anniversary in Ocean City, New Jersey, and it's like, let's limit what we talk about church, as much as we love everybody.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a real thing. Mm-hmm. That's good. So for everyone involved, I'm sure it's tempting. You spend all day doing something, and then so you want to go home, and what else do you have to talk about? So
yeah.
Sometimes it's nice just to spend time with each other, and work on developing those relationships. And
sometimes you have to just dedicate time to that, because if we don't, we tend to not do it at all. Like to just set time aside to say, okay, we are not talking about this. And then sometimes you get into it and you're like, whoa, let's rein it back a little bit here and talk about relationships and what our futures are and all those things. So
so you did this market, this deli. Mm-hmm. What are you doing now? Or what was the latest project?
So after the deli, we actually moved to Florida, and Jess started it was her dream. It was something that she loved to do. She painted furniture, and so she had a home and decor business. And so she would paint till her heart was full, and then she'd paint some more, right? And she was really great at it. She did all the decorating and stuff, and she just had a very unique gift at that. And the people that would come into her store, they would stay there for hours, and it was just a real tiny store, but they felt like there was something different there. There was a peace there. There was something about it that they didn't want to leave, and that was all because of Jesus. It was all because we love Jesus. We try to show people that wherever we go, and even with the market, we found that people would come there specifically just to talk. Like they didn't buy very much, but they felt like they were welcome and they were appreciated and they were cared about. And the same for her shop. Like when people came in, they just wanted to talk. Like she would come home and she'd say, "I think I just had a therapy session with somebody," because they just needed to unload. And that's been kind of the theme of kind of our businesses kind of turn into something more and something that draws people for some I don't know, some odd reason. And it's Jesus, but it's because they just want to come and talk. So we did that. We were in Florida for 2.5 years. We moved back, and I do remodel work. I get to go into people's houses, and I don't know why sometimes, but because I've tried to get out of construction for a long time. Like I said, for 10, 12 years? Like I've just been trying to get out of it, but I know that's what I'm good at, and so I know I can make money there, so it keeps dragging me back. It's like, come on back here, come on back. So that's what I do now, and I look at it as I can go into people's houses and I can pray over their houses. Like I can go in and they let me into their house, even though they don't know Jesus. I can pray through their house. I can pray when I walk through their front door. And hopefully I can be a blessing that way. So that's what I do now.
Yeah, that's great. So if you could give us some advice as we're starting this new thing, what's some good advice for us from your experience of starting things and running organizations or businesses, stuff like that?
I think the biggest thing that we've learned is to start to delegate. Like we've always been very hands-on, and it burns you out. Like it takes your joy, it takes all those things when you're so focused on one thing. And if we can learn to delegate to different people and trust them fully with what, give them direction and let them go. I think that was one of the biggest things, just to let other people into what you're doing, and find the right people, find the people that have the passions that you don't have. Like you have a passion towards certain things, and other people have passions, towards certain things, and they're good at it. So let them go with that, and you focus on your area or your spot that you're good at.
That's good. I'm gonna run over here. I should delegate this job.
But at the same time, that's not always easy to do in a business, because especially when you start up, there's not enough resources to go around, and so you have to do it yourself personally. But when that time comes that you can do it, then it's hard to let it go, because you've been so involved in everything, and you don't trust somebody to take it and do it as good as you did it. So that's another thing we had to really navigate through, is do we really trust people, or we just don't you trust people? Like we really don't trust a lot of people. So when you do that, you're always like, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Or
No, that's good. That's really good. And I know Jessica has been a big part of helping in the business. Absolutely.
Yeah, she does. She keeps me on track. I tend to procrastinate, and she keeps me on alert as far as like making sure I get estimates out and follow up on things. And so she's the brains behind it all. That's for sure. Definitely the brains behind it.
Yeah, the people are big, important resources to anything that we do, for sure. Mm-hmm. Cool. So, I mean, that was neat to hear. How your faith story. Growing up. In the Amish community. Mm-hmm. Kind of seeing the differences between relationship with Jesus and religion, how Jesus has helped you in your organizations, your businesses, as you form this community. Maybe there's an attractiveness to all of that. Could you just talk to us a little bit more specifically about some of your church experiences, your faith experiences, and then that'll lead into where we're going with the rest of our time.
Yeah. So growing up, I came from, there was a lot of religion. Now, I mean, there's a lot of Amish that really love Jesus, but there's other parts of it that just, religion is so, that's how they're going to get to heaven, is their religion, how they dress and all those things. I think I've really had to go back and question a lot of those things. Like, are the things that I've been taught, are they truth? Or is it just something that man has said, like, this is what I'm supposed to believe? And so we've really had to reach back and say, what's this Christian life all about? What's the point? Why am I here? And when we base it on man's beliefs, we're going to be lost. Like, we're going to feel unfulfilled. It's just one of those things where you just feel empty. And I've always believed heaven, about heaven, but I've always been like, life here is pretty good. Like, why would I want to go to heaven? And so I've really had to go back and say, okay, what is heaven like? Like, because I've been taught heaven is good, but why is heaven good? And so I've really had to explore, there's got to be something, heaven has to be great. Otherwise, the devil wouldn't try so hard to, take us astray. And so things like that, I've really had to go back and just really question and ask those hard questions, like, what's the point? Like, what's the deal here? And so I've come far. There's still a lot of questions, but I've come far in just saying, okay, Jesus, I know there's something greater. I know there's something bigger, and I'm gonna start to believe that, instead of heaven is just a place we go and sing and just look around in awe. But I believe heaven is more than that. And so does that answer your question?
We're getting there, yeah.
So maybe you have to ask me a different question.
No, that's okay. No, just thinking. So like those are some of the thoughts and questions and how you've been growing in your relationship with God. Mm-hmm. Has there been specific communities, like specific churches that have helped you along the way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We went to a church called Lord's House of Prayer. It was in Quarryville, and we went there for, was it 3 years, 4 years, babe? Something like that. And we really grew there because it was a small church. It was probably 15, maybe 20 people. And they really felt like we should be able to use our gifts, whether it's prophecy or dreams or whatever it may be. We should be able to use our gifts in that setting and feel safe. So that's where we grew the most in our Christian walk. And there was lots of Sunday mornings that we'd come and the pastor would have a message prepared, and he would just say, I feel like there's something going on in the room. I feel like there's something that we need to tackle, or something that needs to be broken. And we would pray, and we would talk with each other, and it was like a family, and we spoke into each other's lives, and that was more church to me than I had in church, like traditionally through my life, and I never knew something like that existed. And after we were there, it was like you felt like you were in a different realm almost, like you felt like you were being fulfilled because you were using your gifts and speaking into each other's lives, and you felt like, wow, this is what Jesus was talking about. Like, this is what he meant when he meant, like, we're supposed to be with each other and help each other through life, and cry when other people cry and rejoice when other people rejoice. And that was huge for us. going there and be able to just be who we are and use our gifts and practice them. Because a lot of times we don't get to practice them in a normal church tradition, like traditional church, to practice those things, and we felt very fulfilled there.
Yeah. So as we were talking, what was one of those areas that you were able to like use your gifts? I'm thinking of the group that you talked about stuff and just the purpose of that. If you could share that.
Yeah, sure. We felt like we all have stories. Like we all have our own stories growing up. We have our own stories through marriage, and so we decided, or Jess, we both decided to start it. But Jess she's always the brains behind it. I had the idea, and she's like, "Okay, we can make this happen." So we started a small group that was. We told our stories. We told our stories about, like, I would tell my story from when I was a kid to when we got married, and then Jess would tell her story from a kid to when she got married, and then we would come together and tell our married story, and our biggest thing was vulnerability, like really being open with people about what we went through, whether it was good or bad. And I think there was 12 couples in the group, and it just seemed like me and Jess told our story first, and there was a lot of people. There was a couple of couples there that they weren't very open normally, but when it was their turn to share, like they opened up a lot, and so when they opened up, we understood. Some of the things, we understood the way they reacted to certain things, and we could feel the hurt. We could understand, like, she did this or he did this, and it's like, now I understand his story, so I can understand why they do things, and we might have thought that's wrong or that's not great, but they were doing it because they were acting from their past, and so you can understand, okay, this is why they're doing it, and I can say, okay, it's not something against me. It's not because they want to do any certain thing. It's a reaction from their past. So that was just really, really cool time. And we would pray. You know, after everybody was done, we would pray every night that we were together for that couple specifically and speak into their lives. And it was just such an uplifting time of just, I don't know, that was church to me. Like that was huge. Just hearing their hearts and knowing the pain, you know, from their experiences, and then being able to serve them in certain areas, and just speak into them, encourage them.
Yeah, when you shared that with me, I thought, like, that was really cool to hear, like, that type of focus and, you know, to kind of ground it in reality. Because, I mean, one of the things we've talked about as a church, right, is we value developing authentic relationships. We've talked about that. We keep talking about that. And one of the practical outworkings of that is our new here group that we're going to have, our First Steps group. A lot of times, if churches have something like that, not everyone does, but if they do, a lot of times it's like, hey, come to this group and let's hear about the church. Like, we want to tell you about our values, and we want to tell you about our story. We want to tell you about our beliefs. And what I want to do with that group is I want to flip it around and be like, tell me about you. Like, you have so much life experience, and, you know, you come here with your own thoughts, and, like, we're here to love you. We're here to help you, you know, speak into your life. But, like, we need to know, like, where you're coming from. Like, we genuinely want to get to know you and value that. And I think, you know, however we phrase that or discuss it, like that's definitely something that, you know, we want to create that environment for those stories to be shared, and to be able to connect with someone and, you know, help them connect them to God's next step for their life, whatever that looks like. So that, I think, you know, sharing your story, being vulnerable, a lot of those things help foster relationship. They deepen your connection with people. So share with us maybe briefly, like, why is that so important to you? Like, how have you experienced that in your own life, or what difference has that made, or you know, why is that? Why is all of what we just talked about? Why is that important?
I think at that time, like, it's really shaped us. Like that time, that 3-year period or 4-year period, it really showed us the importance of relationship and being vulnerable. I'm not sure where I'm going with that.
Okay.
Can you ask me the question again?
Yeah, just thinking, like, how has it helped you, or like how has connecting that way with people helped grow in your relationship with God?
Well, it's made me know who I am in Christ. Like, I am loved. I'm a son. I'm a son. Like, we're all sons, and it made me believe that I am His son. Where before that, I wouldn't have necessarily looked at it that way. Like, and so I would think my belief system came far as knowing this is who I am. Where before, I really didn't know who I was exactly and where I fit into God's plan.
Right.
And so that's really helped stabilize that.
Yeah, that's good.
Another thing with the groups is we had a lot of fun together. Like, Jess had some amazing things planned. Like, she had, did we do a New Year's or a Christmas party in the barn?
Harvest party.
Yeah, we did a harvest party, and we had like, we had dances set up and just a whole bunch of different games and stuff. And we had so much fun together. And then there was another time that we did a treasure hunt where there was like 4 groups, and there was 4 people in a car. They had to go around to different places and all over the county and find different things. And then they had to go to the next stop. And it was like a race. It was a race, and everybody had to find a key. And so there was like 4 cars, and they were all going to the same spot at some point. And it was just when they came together and heard their stories at the end, it was like it just creates a bond. It creates something special when you can laugh together and have fun together. And that was huge. That was another big thing that really helped the group come together and trust each other and, you know, get to know each other and love each other and our quirks and our negativities and all those things.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that. I mean, we've talked about that as groups too. Like, as much as we love getting together and studying the Bible, like, we want to do things outside of that because, I mean, it creates those connections and allows for that maybe trust or those bridges to be built so that the truth really can speak to our hearts.
Yeah.
What are some other ways that as a group or even individually we can, if we value relationships, if we say that we do, because, I mean, who doesn't, right? But if we say that we do, like, what are some practical things that we can do either as a group or individuals to, like, really make it a point to, you know, connect with people in that way, to care for people? What are some things, thinking practically, or even work projects, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it's paying attention, like opening your eyes to people around us. Whether you go into a grocery store, whether it's opening a door for somebody, whether it's helping somebody out with groceries. Because I know when we had our young kids, you know, we'd have 4 of them, and you know, you would walk out from Walmart and people wouldn't hold the door open for you or help you with your cart, and it was always just like, man, that would have been so nice if you would have just helped me. And I think, like, things like that, even small things like that, we can do and just say, wow, she looks like she's struggling. Can I help, or can I do something to help them through these little things? And then as far as, like, we've done a lot of work projects for whether it was neighbors or people in the community that we see that maybe their grass is high, let's go mow their grass, or maybe their flower beds needs mulch. Like, can we help you? Can we do those little things? And those things go a long, long way. because a lot of people don't feel cared about. And when you show them that kindness, it makes them wonder what's different about you. Like, why are you trying to help me? And I don't want anything from you. It's just because that's what Jesus told us to do. He told us to serve and to help people when we need help. So I think we just need to open our eyes. Like, we just need to look around sometimes, just stop, because we tend to be so busy with day-to-day life and our own problems and our own situations, and we don't tend to stop and just look around.
So, I mean, that's good. Let that soak in. We're gonna do some sort of caring project like that sometime in July with our groups. We'll see what the details of that are, but that's one of the rhythms that we want to build into what we do. We want to get together, we want to have fun, but we also want to get involved in serving, maybe helping different organizations. We did that with Water Street a while ago. And then hopefully, I want to just go to the bike trail and, give out waters or, do some little things like that, which, like you said, kind of creates that, like, why are you doing that? Like, It's a natural kind of question. And you're like, well,
is there something wrong with you? Why are you here?
I'm sharing God's love with you that He's so clearly showed to me. So. Yeah, so there's like you said, taking time for people, just seeing and the value of relationships, and that's certainly a huge part of that, developing your authentic relationship with others, but then there's developing your authentic relationship with God too. That's important. And so that type of relationship is different than like a religious kind of mindset, like, hey, I just go to church because that's what I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to earn my, right standing with God through that, or that's just what my family always does, or, whatever the case may be. So maybe just talk a little bit more about, you mentioned it a couple times, but that difference between religion and kind of what you've come to know as a relationship with God.
Yeah. I think it's just been experience, like experiencing God's faithfulness, His continual faithfulness. There's many stories where I'll just take you back to our market for a story and just show how this is how my faith has grown. So we were at this market for about 3 years, and we just weren't making any money. We didn't get to pay ourselves at all. Well, there's probably a couple weeks out of the 3 years that we got to pay ourselves. And so we just decided, like, okay, we're going to sell it, and we just can't keep going on at this pace because we're just burned out. And so we were trying to sell it. We were trying to sell it for like 6 months, and nothing. There was really no interest. There was a couple of people that came, but they just weren't interested. So we were like, you know what? We're going to just stop advertising. We're going to tell the market, on this certain date, we're moving out. We're pulling all our equipment out. We're pulling all these things out. We're just done. And so the date was coming, and we're like, I mean, should I like reserve trailers? Like, what do I need to do? Because we had a couple freezers. We had a bunch of huge showcases. Like, what are we going to do with them? And so we were like, you know what? We're just not going to do anything. We're just going to say, okay, God, this is in your hands. So 2 weeks before it was time to move out, this guy comes up and he says, I've heard you're trying to sell this. And we're like, yeah, we are. And he's like, well, I'm really interested. And we had talked to him a few times, but nothing really serious. And so 2 weeks before we were about to close, he came and said, okay, I want to buy it. And that was a huge faith step for us to believe that God was going to come through. And he bought it. And so every time those things happen in my life, I try to put a stake in the ground and say, okay, God, you've done it here. You're going to do it again. And that's kind of been the story of our life and how my faith has grown, is just seeing God work. And he's done that like lots of times. Like when we put that stake in the ground, we can always go back and say, he did this for me here. And whatever situation I'm going through, he's going to come through again. Now, it's not always the way we think in our timing, because we want it to happen when we want it to happen. But for us, it's been like the last minute. Like the last minute that we're about to move, God shows up. But it's not been to like the last possible minute. And we're just like, okay, God, can't you just show up like a month ahead of time? But it's always right on time. It always seems like it's just right on time.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, just that story I'm thinking of, like, instead of trying to feel like you've got to go somewhere or do something or do the right thing, God shows up, like, in your life, like what you're dealing with, what you're thinking about, where God's placed you for work, like, and that could be a difference in, like, that religious kind of mindset versus that relational kind of thing.
I think that's what's grown me from religion to knowing who Jesus really is, like experiencing. And I think as people too, that's when we understand who Jesus is, and not just knowing in our heads, but knowing him in our hearts is when we experience those things and really get it. Like we really get what God's trying to teach us and show us when we get it in our hearts, not just our heads. And that's what religion is, between the head and the heart.
So one of the our last big question for today is when God comes into our life or does speak to us or gets into our heart, we all know, I know that what's in there isn't always good. And so sometimes there's hesitancy or I don't know, we like to put up walls, we like to kind of hide things, but yet we've talked about, the value of being opposite of that, of being vulnerable, of opening up. I think there's value in that, of opening up to God, allowing him to speak into your life, but also opening up to others and allowing those relationships to happen, that way as well. So, how talk a little bit more about that, the importance of being vulnerable, and maybe a story that you have of that being an impact in your life or somebody else's life.
Anytime we keep things in the secret, we're going to pay. Like we're just going to pay for it, whether it's anxieties, fears, when me and Jess were married, we were probably married probably 6 years. My dad had an affair, and just seeing how it wrecked his life because he kept things in secret, just made us really realize, like, the more we keep secrets, the worse off we're going to be. Like, it's just going to be a downfall. And so we just decided, like, we are going to just let people know who we are, like, because it's not worth it. Like, it's not worth to carry the stress to try to hide those things, because we just dig ourselves a deeper and deeper ditch. And we have just been like, our life needs to be an open book. Like, whatever it is, like, just for instance, my cell phone. Jess can go to my cell phone anytime she wants to, and it is not locked. And that's just one way for me to say, I don't care who picks up my phone. You can pick up my phone, and you can do whatever you want, and there's nothing to hide. And I just feel like that's how our lives need to be. Like, our lives need to be open and nothing left to hide, because that's where those roots grow. And that's just, that's just how we choose to live. And we're not always perfect at it because we screw up, but we try to have an open book.
In those moments of vulnerability or like, your phone's open, but there's value in, you that might help you stay away from certain things, but it also might reveal other things, and so that gives opportunity for a love that you might not have ever experienced that before, or a forgiveness that you might not otherwise have experienced before, and in those moments, that's like that's the scary part, because it's kind of out of your hands, you know. You're like, I'm trusting my wife or my husband who I love, or my, you know, whoever, my friend, whoever, to respond in that way, and they might not, you know. I mean, you can't control that, but yet when we do, and there is that reciprocal action, you know, then that's a life-changing thing for sure. And we can trust that God always, you know, men we don't always know, but God we always know. There will be a forgiveness and a love and a you know, a developing of that relationship no matter what we do.
And you know, we also need to be careful about who we're vulnerable with, because that's huge. Because we can be vulnerable with somebody and they can take advantage of that. And so we need to protect ourselves in that. So I felt like I needed to say that, just because that's important. We need to surround ourselves with the right people that are going to want to care and understand about those vulnerabilities and help you, and not try to exploit them or whatever.
So on that note, if there's anything else that comes to mind, anything that you didn't get a chance to say that you wanted to say, now would be the time.
Okay. I think one of the things that I did want to say, and we talked about some of our notes and stuff, is just how like we've chose, like even through our businesses, to keep our family together. Like we work together as a family. Like when we do things, when our businesses, when we start our businesses, they're a part of it. They're not going somewhere else and they're to a babysitter. They're not going here or there. They're with us, and that's something that we've really tried to make a really conscious effort of, is to include our family, like to include our kids. You know, if you want something to work, it takes hard work, and that they can see that and get that. When you follow Jesus, you know, it's hard sometimes, but I think when we include each other with everything that we do, they see that, and then they start to, when they grow up, they don't stray far from that relationship or the work ethic or knowing Jesus, because kids have to see and know Jesus too. Like when they experience Jesus, they're probably not going to stray. But when we grow up in religion and just know Jesus, like in our heads, you'll tend to stray. So when we experience Jesus, we tend to say, okay, this is good. And that's the way our kids are too. So I've always, this is for everyone else, I've always appreciated, as I'm getting to know Jerry and Jessica and their family, like they've done something right in the parenting world. And I hope so. Just getting to know their kids and to see how they interact with each other and work together as a family, and I mean, it's really neat to see. So I told Jerry, I said, next time we do something like this, he's going to talk about parenting. Uh-oh. That's a little scary there. Yeah, maybe Jess should be included in this one. Yeah, she needs to sit right here with me next time. Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah. Thanks so much for doing this. Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It was good. Thanks for sharing, and I hope it was helpful to everyone to hear some more about life and faith and how Jesus makes a difference in your life, our life. So